Trade Center, and they've evacuated the federal court buildings where the terrorism trials of Ramzi Youssef and others were held. Anything that could be a symbolic target is now being emptied out in New York. New York is going into kind of a lockdown mode. I think you'll also see in Washington the same kind of air patrols have been scrambled around principal buildings there.
Okay. We have on the phone one of those people who makes his living analyzing terrorism. Kyle Olson, do you hear me?
Yes, I do.
I wonder if on a day like this anybody wants to be thought of as an expert on terrorism. Be that as it may, and assuming that, knowing that much of the country is shocked at the apparent breadth of this, are you?
Well, you know, this is the kind of attack that has fallen more into Tom Clancy novels than into actual response planning. Having said that, we've been anticipating for a long time. We've wondered why it's been so relatively quiet. The suggestions of Osama bin Laden's involvement. What has he been doing since Cole? Other groups out there with a real or imagined grudge against the United States. The nature of the event is shocking. The fact that it's happened is not.
Thank you very much, Kyle. Really appreciate it. Kyle Olson.
Yeah, one quick thing.
Yeah, go ahead.
One quick thing. The suggestions that are floating around out there right now. There's apparently this claim from the Democratic Front for the Liberation of Palestine.
Right.
Very interesting to know. If this is legitimate, if this claim stands up, this appears to be the first time this group has targeted Americans. This group has primarily steered away from the more extreme end of the violence scale. They focused less on suicide bombings, more on gun attacks and that sort of thing in the territories against Israelis.
Well,
if this holds up, this is a very different tactic.
Well, if it is true, and of course the Democratic Front for the Liberation of Palestine was very much involved in attacking aircraft in the 1970s, which carried Americans. So certainly would accept your notion that it's a recent attack on Americans. Thank you, Kyle, very much.
You bet.
As Mr. Olson makes clear, there has been at least one claim, and those of us who cover this for a very long period of time are always suspicious of claims. People who cover international terrorism. I'm going to interrupt myself. Linda Douglas, our Capitol Hill correspondent, I think is on the phone, and if she's not, she already reports there has been an explosion of some kind at the Capitol. Is Linda Douglas on the telephone? Let's get her on the phone as quickly as we have. She just reported a couple of minutes ago that the leaders of the Congress, Senator Lott, Senator Daschle, the Republican and Democratic leaders in the Senate, had been taken to some have been taken to some undisclosed secure location. Our general assumption is that there's no panic involved in this, that somebody in the Capitol chain of command.
Absolutely. The first thing they try to do is get positions so they can gather information and make decisions about what to do next. One of the things that law enforcement officials had been planning for is the notion of a multi-tiered attack, an attack occurring in multiple places simultaneously. Because one of the things they've talked about is that terrorists want to project more fear, as much fear as possible.
In Africa, in Kenya and in Tanzania, the attack 2 summers ago in the United States. But the notion that the terrorists, either an organization or organizations, plural, should be able to mount a concerted effort against the United States in this way, causing in this instance so many casualties, in the instance of the trade tower certainly so many casualties, is going to astound people in the political and military and intelligence establishment.
Absolutely. The notion that you could have multiple attacks like this, they had been planning for it, they had not seen it.
It would be a real first test, literally by fire, for the Bush administration. You recall, after the embassy bombings in East Africa, the Clinton administration waited about 10 days and launched a missile attack against the camps of Osama bin Laden, who they felt confident.
Dennis Cross, do you hear me?
Yes, I can, Peter.
Dennis, I understand that you were in the World Trade Center when either this or these attacks occurred. Am I correct?
That's correct. It was, I guess it was slightly before 9 o'clock, and I work on the 36th floor in One World Trade Center. I work in the insurance industry. Probably hundreds of people in my industry in both of these 2 buildings.
And what happened?
As I was...
Hey, Dennis, just let me stop for a second. Somebody is trying another telephone on this line. Could they please not do that while we listen to Mr. Cross? Thanks. Go ahead, Mr. Cross. Go ahead, Dennis.
Essentially, I was, sort of at my desk working, general office activity, and felt an enormous it almost felt like an earthquake. Like I could literally feel and see things in the office moving and the floor moving. Immediately after it was some sort of explosion or something, there was an enormous volume of debris and paper. It almost looked like a dirty parade. All of this material just falling down. I was looking out the south side of One World Trade, and everybody in the office was kind of screaming, kind of gathering in the middle, and I went to the window, and I immediately saw one woman who appeared to be motionless, laying on the roof of a lower building next to me. At that point, everybody started to gather their things. They were trying to evacuate people down the stairwell.
Did the electricity go out in the building?
The lights flickered a couple of times, and then it was weird. It was kind of like there was one sort of rush, and then shortly after that there was another one. I don't know if it was maybe the other tower or if it were elevators in the inside. Sort of just dropping to the floor.
Are you aware that one of the Twin Trade Towers has now collapsed on itself?
Yeah, I'm about probably 5 blocks from there on the corner of Greenwich and Warren.
And as we looked at it on the screen here, Dennis, we could see the smoke from this collapse just sweep, billow forward through the lower blocks of Manhattan. Did you have a sense of that?
Completely. I was at that point. I'm a little bit northwest, certainly north, maybe to the west side of Tower 1, and I was trying to get to Broadway. My wife works on the other side of downtown here. I'm still trying to get there, but the smoke, I couldn't see. It was a wall of smoke, and if you were in it, you couldn't see. If you were out of it, you could just see the wall of smoke. It was,
how difficult? I'm sorry for interrupting. How difficult was the evacuation?
I'm sorry, say that again, Peter?
How difficult was it to evacuate from, at least from the 110 stories in the building?
I would say that it wasn't extremely slow going down a somewhat narrow stairwell. If there was any sort of to move quickly, then it literally slowed down or stopped everybody. I was on 36, so it wasn't too terrible. When I got down to the 15th or 12th floor or so, there was water coming in from the doors, kind of at our feet level, and then it just was a waterfall down continually down all of the stairs, probably. In some cases 3-4 inches deep. At that point, sirens and alarms were going off, and then people started to get a little frantic there.
Dennis, thank you very much.
Okay,
I really appreciate you calling in.
You're very
Dennis
welcome.
Krause, who works did work on the 36th floor of the World Trade Center in this particular tower, which is still standing. There's only one of the trade towers now standing, the other having collapsed on itself long ago. All of the federal office buildings in Washington have now been evacuated. All federal buildings in Washington have now been evacuated. All aircraft in the skies over the United States have been ordered to land at the nearest airport. All aircraft itself has actually sunny. It was a Boeing 767. It would, under normal circumstances, if it were full, carry about 160 passengers, including 2 pilots, 9 or 10 crew, but we have no idea yet whether or not the plane was heavily loaded or not.
Peter, big concern now from the scene that the Northwest Tower, the one remaining standing, is leaning and buckling in the northwest corner. They're moving back the mobilization areas, and they're cordoning off the area in a much wider zone now, because obviously they are now concerned about the possibility of a second collapse.
I'm still desperately confused, John, about what may have caused the building to collapse.
As you watch the videotape, it appeared to buckle from the middle, from the point of impact and collapse, which, with no background in architecture, I don't know about the structural vulnerability, but as you see, debris starts to
peel
fall,
away.
Then it cracks, and then it just goes straight down. And now they say that the other tower is leaning. If you look at some of the pictures, it appears to be on a slight angle to the right.
Yeah,
they say the fire is also spreading downward now through the tower. And I think there's a real decision to make there. I have not been able to hear whether they're keeping people in there to fight that fire, or they're just leaving it empty to let the fire burn itself out, because they're going to have a real problem with people in there if it's in jeopardy.
At the same time, New York firefighters have a reputation of staying until the very end, and if there are civilians in that building which need to be rescued, and clearly there are, then there's no way the emergency services, I can imagine, are going to pull out at this point.
And if the elevators are disabled from that height, there's no fast way out.
Precisely. 110 stories down, and this appears to have occurred, this occurred about 2/3 of the way up. ABC's John McWethy now confirms for us, we've had from an eyewitness, or he adds to our eyewitness, saying that a small plane heading north, which is exactly what our eyewitness a little earlier told us, exploded at the base of the Pentagon, at the base of one wing of the Pentagon. They evacuated everyone inside, and there was subsequent...
So the Pentagon can see what's coming in. Another question that they have to look at here is whether any of these planes, once the impact occurred.
Yeah, these in every instance, well, I shouldn't say in every instance, certainly in the instance of the Pentagon, it looks more than a single aircraft just exploding on the ground. But again, we don't know precisely the size of the aircraft. We won't speculate on that. But Lisa Stark, who covers aviation for us, confirms that it was American Flight 11 to Los Angeles. There were 90 passengers and crew on board. And there was a second plane. Help me understand this now. So we believe that the two aircraft have flown into the trade towers. Both belonged to American Airlines, and they had both been hijacked. And there were 90 passengers and crew on the first plane and 60 passengers and crew on the second plane. That is if there's any doubt about that, someone please contradict. I beg your pardon. The second plane was not hijacked from Boston, but from Dulles Airport, we're being told, which of course is outside Washington, and we do not know if that was the... I'm going to make this absolutely clear because this reporting gets muggy. We've now reports of two planes from American Airlines, one from Boston, Flight 11 to Los Angeles, which we believe is one of the aircraft that went into the trade towers. We have a second plane, American Airlines Dulles to Los Angeles, with 60 passengers and crew, and that is certainly bigger than a small commuter aircraft, so it may also have been involved in the near. We'll do our best to hand that down as well. Senior law enforcement officials in Washington now tell us that a car bomb has exploded outside the State Department. It's a report now from the Associated Press, about to confirm it with our own people at the State Department, though everybody in Washington has been evacuated from their buildings. But a car bomb has now exploded outside the State Department. And John Miller, I see you writing quite frantically on something else.
It's at the scene now at the World Trade Center. Because of the concerns of the structural stability of the remaining tower, a temporary headquarters mobilization point triage center was set up at Stuyvesant.